The sun rose over Tehran, but the city did not stir like it used to. Streets that once echoed with the sound of school bells and tea vendors were now empty, silent except for the faint wail of distant sirens. 12-year-old Reza sat on the floor of the basement, holding his little sister tightly against his chest. Her name was Reza, meaning wish, and she was only 5. Her small hands gripped his shirt every time the ground shook. Their mother, Nilufar, moved like a ghost between the shadows, lighting candles in front of a faded portrait of their father. He had left 6 months ago to serve on the border. Since then, there had been no phone calls, no letters, only silence. "Will Baba come home today?" Reza asked softly, her voice trembling. Reza didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he pulled the girl closer and whispered, "He's fighting so we can be safe." But safe didn't exist anymore. Across the desert, in Jerusalem, 17-year-old Leah Abramson pressed her back against the cold hospital wall, her scrubs soaked in blood that wasn't hers. Room 5 boy, age 10, shrapnel wounds, the nurse called. Leah wiped her face, took a breath, and forced herself back inside. She had volunteered at the children's hospital to feel useful, to distract herself from the nightmares. But some wounds were too deep, not just the ones in the flesh but in the soul. A week ago, her older brother David, a soldier in the IDF, had gone silent. His unit crossed into a combat zone near the Lebanese border. Every beep of the phone filled her with hope. Every message not from him shattered it again. Reza missed school. He missed football with his friends. The scent of freshly baked naan from the bakery next door. The sound of laughter in the alley. Now, they spent their days in silence. One day, he folded a piece of newspaper into a crane and placed it on the windowsill. They say in Japan if you fold 1,000 cranes, your wish comes true. He told Reza, "What did you wish for?" "That the war forgets." Leah's mother opened the package on the kitchen table with trembling hands. Inside was David's duffel bag. "No body. Just this," her mother whispered. Leah pulled out the old, worn notebook David always carried. It had sketches of tanks, of birds, of her face, drawn in his careful hand. On the last page was a letter. "If you're reading this, I'm not coming home. Tell Leah I believe in people, even the ones we're told to hate. The world is broken, but maybe she can help fix it." She clutched the notebook to her chest and screamed into the empty room. A missile had fallen 2 blocks away. The smoke still curled through the air, and dust coated the streets. Reza stood by the old pomegranate tree in their courtyard. It had survived decades, revolutions, earthquakes, sanctions, and still, its red fruit bloomed. He held one in his hand and remembered how his father would cut it open and say, "This fruit is like us, cut open, torn, but still full of life." Reza ran to him, holding another paper crane. "We'll make 1,000, she said, grinning. Reza didn't have the heart to tell her they only had 30 pieces of paper left. Leah began writing again. Every evening after her hospital shift, she returned to the rooftop of their apartment building. The air was cool and the city quiet, a silence that felt heavier than noise. She wrote letters she'd never sent, letters to David, letters to herself, letters to a world that was breaking. "Today I treated a boy who had no name. He just cried and clutched a stuffed rabbit with half an ear. When I asked his name, he said, 'Where is my house?'" She folded each letter and tied them to small helium balloons she bought in secret. One flew every night. She didn't know that one would travel farther than any of them expected. The bombing reached closer to Reza's neighborhood. One night, the roof cracked, windows shattered. Reza screamed. Their mother packed only what she could carry. An old family photo, a scarf from her wedding day, Reza's notebook of paper cranes, and they fled, not knowing where the road would take them. By dawn, they were on foot with hundreds of others, moving across dry land toward the mountains. Reza didn't cry. He held Reza's hand tightly, and his eyes stayed fixed ahead. War had stolen their home. He wouldn't let it take his sister too. A tent city had formed near the Iranian-Afghan border. Red Crescent volunteers handed out water, but it was never enough. Reza watched his mother cough in the dust. Arzu's feet were blistered, and her smile had vanished. Reza opened his pack and pulled out a broken balloon they'd found tangled in a tree on their way. Tied to it was a letter in Hebrew. He didn't understand the words, but on the back was a hand-drawn picture of a bird flying over a wall. Reza looked at it and said, "Maybe it's from someone kind." Reza folded the paper carefully. "Then maybe they're still out there." Leah stopped speaking for 3 days. She walked the hospital halls in silence, treating wounds, changing bandages, stitching torn skin, but her lips remained sealed. When her supervisor pulled her aside, Leah finally broke. "I keep seeing my brother in their faces," she whispered. "Even the enemy's children. How can that be?" Her supervisor, an old Arab nurse named Nur, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because grief has no borders." It was the first time Leah cried in front of someone since the war began. At the edge of the refugee camp, Reza began hanging his paper cranes on sticks. Dozens fluttered in the wind like a prayer garden. Children gathered, asking what they were. "Each one is a wish," he said. "What do you wish for?" Reza looked at the mountains. "To go home, or find a new one." That night, Arzu tied the balloon letter to their tallest crane and whispered, "Find the girl who sent this. Tell her we believe in kindness too." And for the first time in weeks, Reza smiled. Leah had never seen anything like the border medical camp. It was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. More like a breath held too long. Inside the tents, Israeli doctors and Arab volunteers worked side by side. There were no flags, no uniforms, only bandages, IVs, and bruised children from both sides. Her first patient was a girl named Arzu, dehydrated, thin, eyes too old for her years. Leah gently touched her arm. "You're safe here." Arzu didn't answer, but her brother, sitting beside her, looked up with wary eyes. "My name is Reza," he said in English. Leah froze. She had seen that name before, on the back of the balloon letter she had tied weeks ago. Reza watched the tall girl with the tired eyes and kind hands. When she saw his name, her breath caught. "You wrote this," she whispered, holding the crumpled piece of paper he had found tied to a balloon. The bird drawing, the letter, the hope. Reza's lips parted. "It flew to me." Leah sank to her knees. "I never thought anyone would find it." And in that moment, the war felt smaller, like maybe the sky wasn't trying to destroy them, but deliver a message, from one broken heart to another. On the outskirts of the camp, an Israeli soldier named Ayan stood watch. He had orders not to engage, not to ask names. But when he saw Reza carrying Arzu toward the clinic, his instincts kicked in. Later, he sat near their tent, watching them eat from metal bowls. He thought of his own sister, killed in a rocket attack last year. He thought of all the stories he was told about the enemy, the other side. But this boy was not a threat. This boy was just trying to survive. For the first time in months, Aiden lowered his weapon and whispered, "I'm sorry." At night, Leah sat beside Reza and Arzu. She helped them make paper cranes from wrappers, napkins, anything they could find. Reza explained, "Each one is a wish." Leah smiled. "What do you wish for now?" Reza didn't hesitate. "For no child to run again." Arzu pointed to Leah. "Do you still write letters to the sky?" Leah nodded, and so they wrote one together, in 3 languages, Persian, Hebrew, and English. They tied it to a lantern and watched it drift toward the stars. The next morning, a missile hit near the camp. No one died, but everything changed. Tents collapsed. Panic returned. The line between safety and danger vanished again. Reza clutched Leah's hand as soldiers rushed in. His mother screamed. Arzu cried. Leah stayed calm. "I won't let anything happen to you." And even though she was trembling inside, Reza believed her, because sometimes bravery isn't loud. Sometimes it's a nurse holding a child's hand as the sky falls. By dawn, the medical camp was being dismantled. An emergency order came. Border to unstable. Evacuate immediately. Leah moved from cot to cot, helping patients board the trucks. When she reached Reza and Arzu, the Red Crescent nurse shook her head. Refugees without documents go to the secondary transport. Less protected. They're just kids? Leah argued. I know, the nurse said, but rules don't care about children. Reza looked up. Are you leaving? Leah hesitated. She had a seat on the main convoy, a safer route, a return to Jerusalem, a life. She looked at them. No family, no papers, no chance. She got off the truck. They traveled by night. Reza, Arzu, Leah, and dozens of others, over mountains, through forests, across dusty roads. Leah wrapped Arzu in her jacket and held Reza's hand when the cold got too sharp. They shared a stale loaf of bread and water from a leaking bottle. They didn't speak much. Words had become too heavy. At one checkpoint, a soldier asked Leah for her ID. She handed it over. He looked at the children beside her. These your siblings? She paused, then nodded. Yes. He didn't question her, because war breaks rules. But sometimes, it builds new families. One night, as they camped near a burned-out school, Leah opened her brother David's old notebook to keep Arzu entertained. Inside were doodles of birds, olive branches, and children playing in gardens. But then they found something else, a page torn, folded, and hidden in the back pocket. A sketch of two hands, one Israeli, one Iranian, holding the same paper crane. Underneath, David had written, "The sky doesn't know borders. Maybe people don't have to either." Reza traced the lines with his finger. Your brother, he believed in peace. Leah nodded, tears in her eyes. He believed in people. Reza whispered, so do I. They reached the final barrier, a wall of concrete and barbed wire. Behind it, a new life, safety, papers, a chance to rebuild. But only citizens could pass. Leah could go. The children could not. A soldier waved her forward. Come on, miss. She looked down at Reza and Arzu. They looked back. Not asking, not pleading, just waiting. Leah pulled a photo from her jacket, the one of David. She showed it to the officer. He died believing in peace. These kids, they're my peace. The soldier hesitated, and then, quietly, he opened the gate. Months later, in a small town nestled between ruins and fields, Reza planted a pomegranate tree beside a modest new home. Arzu strung paper cranes from its branches. Leah worked at a local clinic, smiling again, healing again, living again. One evening, they lit a sky lantern and tied a letter to it, written in 3 languages. It read, to anyone who finds this, we are not enemies. We are survivors, and we believe in the world you still have time to build. The lantern drifted upward, slow, soft, and glowing, until it disappeared into the same sky that once burned with war. This time, it carried only light.